Today I'm going to replace the main shaft of the Traxxas Mini E-revo with this steel part, and the reason I'm doing this is because I have two Mini E-revos, one for me and one for my son, and he has already broken two plastic joints for the main shaft, center shaft, and I've broken it once, and that's like in 3 weeks time, so it's already a weak part. And why is it weak? Well, I'll tell you why. If we look underneath this car, here's the skid plate that covers the main center shaft, and on the rear part this is the rear part, yes, this is the rear part. In this area a lot of sand and pebbles enters the shaft and actually just starts to wear it down, and it goes fast. I think I replaced one of the Mini E-revos joints, and then we drove like for one time a few packs of LiVo batteries, and it broke again. So this is a really weak part on this car, and the reason is because there's a lot of dirt and stones and pebbles and whatever entering this one and just stripping it. And I'll show you how it looks. It looks terrible. If we look at the front part, this part, well, there's actually not much wear at all. So my thought is that this, when you drive on pebbles and sand, somehow they enter this rear part. I don't know how, but there is like a hole here, and I think that's enough. And even there's a hole from this one as well in the front, but I don't think the pebbles really bounce to the front part as much. They bounce maybe underneath the car, and then they enter in this part. So I will just unscrew this and show how it looks. It looks really bad. So before we start to remove this one, just a quick note. There are I think that you have to remove this part, which is the rear, with 4 screws, and then use like a 2mm hobby tool. Traxxas make a tool set of their own, which I have, but I actually prefer these general hobby ones because they're already assembled. The Traxxas one I have to assemble the right size to the handle. So anyway, you have to remove these 4 screws first, and then the skid plate is held by 1, 2, 3, it's 8 screws, and you also have to loosen this one in order to get this out. So let's take it away then. Okay, so now I removed this bottom skid plate. And as you can see, this is the main shaft axle. And if I turn this one, maybe you can see in this rear part there are actually small stones at this end. And these will over time, or pretty quickly actually, just rip this joint, and you have to replace it. And it's all plastic, and it's just a bad design. I don't know why Traxxas didn't just cover this part with some sort of, I don't know, cover to avoid this. Because if you look at the front part here, so I can get in frame, this part, it's like almost brand new. There are no pebbles. So actually the front part worked just fine, but the rear part, well, it's stripped. And if you look at the main shaft, it's like there are several marks. This is like all nice when you put in a new one, and this one looks awful. So I don't know why they actually made it like this, because I don't think they have changed this design for as long as it's been available. And I tried to put some tape over this part to keep it clean, but I guess the only thing you can do is actually to replace this one with a steel one and maybe put some sort of cover on this part. So I will remove this and we'll check out the steel part. So now I've removed these center shaft plastic things, and as you can see, they are all, you know, just damaged. The pebbles have actually made grooves in entire length of this one. So these will break pretty soon. Okay, so let's open this one. It's like performance accessories. Okay, let's have a look inside. Well, what's this? I guess this is the main shaft with steel parts, and then we have the joints, pins to secure them, and O-rings. Okay, so this is the center part of the steel shaft, and it's actually pretty simple. I think we'll do this in just a few minutes. It's more or less two parts. It's the rear part, which screws onto the rear with a supplied pin, and it's the center end to the front part, which mounts also with a pin on the drive axle. Pretty straightforward, and there's the O-ring goes over here. I'm not really sure why they have this ring, if it is to keep something out of the shaft, I don't know really. But let's see how it looks installed then. Here's the steel shaft installed, and pretty straightforward to do. Just remove the old parts and use the pins to screw in the front part and the rear part. Hopefully this will make this center shaft last longer, but I'm a bit skeptical because on the rear part I think they will still enter like a lot of sand, gravel and pebbles, and that this part will somehow get damaged. I'm not really sure, but time will tell. So if I could somehow, you know, prevent this area from having any rocks entering, that would be great. But so far I've not really figured that out. Okay, so everything is back together. So what do I think about this steel upgrade? Well, if it solves the problem and I don't have to replace all the plastic parts and the car can just keep on running, that's great. Now I only replaced the rear part, which goes from here to here, and I kept the front part because I didn't have any problem with the front part. And the front part, as I show you, it looked just fine. So I think this will last. Hopefully the influence of this steel one won't influence this one so much. So it will be more pressure on this one, hopefully. I think it's worth it. Well, if it keeps the car running, I would say yes, it's definitely worth it. I think it's just too bad that Traxxas puts like poor parts in these cars, because as I've mentioned, I've had this car and the other one for like a couple of weeks, and I've already broken this part like 3 times, which I think is just too much. And I've not only broken the shaft couplings, I've also broken like the steering servo. So I replaced it with the Savox metal gear servo. And it only took me like 2 minutes to break this one. So I think that's a truly poor part. Other than that, I think, of course, you will break like these plastic arms and maybe the bumpers. I put on RPM bumpers on this one. So that's to be expected if you jump and run into things. But I think the steering servo, it just should been metal from the start. And I think certain parts on this car should really be metal parts just to make it last. I mean, it's a great motor, it's a great car to drive, but there's too much strain on the parts. So I really think that they could have made it better, even if that would be a bit more expensive car. But it's fun to use. I mean, so it's no problem with the actual design of it, but I just want better parts. Well, okay,